Across the Aisle segment tonight. Earlier this week, the White House issued a new revised executive order on immigration. The order freezes the inflow of refugees from any country for the next 120 days and blocks the arrival of travelers from 6 conflict-prone countries for 90 days, notably leaving Iraq off that list of countries. The new order also drops preferences for religious minorities in Islamic countries, aka Christians, and yet somehow this is still being called a Muslim ban. With me now to dive into this phrasing, Democratic strategist Joel Payne. Joel, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
All right, Joel, I read this piece on Huffington Post earlier this morning. It was called "A Muslim Ban by Any Other Name is Still a Muslim Ban." They used the word draconian ban here. And Joel, I just want you to explain this to me as someone whose political viewpoints are different than my own. How is this executive order a Muslim ban?
Well, Liz, obviously the president and his team took a lot of time to go back and to make sure that this could pass all the trappings of any judicial challenge that this gets. I think it is in effect still a Muslim ban. We know the president as far back as 18 months ago said that he wanted to ban Muslims from this country. It's the first significant act that he took as president. And his advisors have been on TV talking about they're looking for ways to get around the law. So they haven't changed their purpose, they've just changed their tactics.
Right, so you believe it has to do, or you believe it is a Muslim ban in and of itself, even though that's not in the order of the text because of President Trump's comments from a year ago. I understand that perspective. I mean, I didn't agree with President Trump's comments at the time. I don't know if I would view it as going around the law here as so much as trying to follow the law or abide by the law. But let me just ask you, I mean, this doesn't affect 85% of the world's Muslim. Does that still qualify it as a Muslim ban?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited that the president has decided that he wants to try to follow the law now. That's exciting. It's exciting development. Look, maybe it's not a Muslim ban. Maybe that's not the terminology you would use. But in effect, it's the same thing. It's the same principle. And what I would also say is that the president has played a really smart parlor game here, where he has set the bounds of this so extremely. He's gone so far with his first order that what he's done is now he's kind of come back to a place that looks like it's in the middle, but it's really not. It's still a pretty extreme step to take by this administration. Also, what happened to the fact that, we needed to act on this immediately? It seems like he held this new ban for political purposes. It seems like he waited until it was an opportune time in the calendar to actually take this step.
Right. I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, it seems like he was wanting to get it right because it got challenged so many times in court, and it is an issue of national security. It needs to be able to be implemented without being held or being put on a stay because of the legal challenges here. But I guess this is my question then for people who would deem this a Muslim ban. I obviously don't agree with that characterization, but I think we as Americans, we can recognize that the majority of Muslims are peaceful. We all have friends who are Muslims. We all live in the same community as Muslims. Obviously, the majority of the 1.6 billion Muslims around the world are peaceful. They're not terrorists. But there are the minority who pervert the interpretation of the religion of Islam to use that as a motivation or a justification to commit terror acts. And I think that's recognizing that differentiation is not an insult to peaceful Muslims. It's actually to our credit that we make that differentiation and to use the word differentiation again, to actually differentiate between the perversion of the religion versus just stereotyping the whole religion. And the way that this order was done, the way that this executive order targets countries that are torn apart by this perverted version of Islam, I mean, to me, that separates it entirely from just being stereotypical about 1.6 billion people around the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's telling about this is that it's an action that he's taking really to kind of follow a political predicate, right? He's gone out of his way to say, hey, I'm going to go follow up on this campaign promise. Meanwhile, you've got people in this country who are attacking people of other faiths and other ethnicities. You've got American-born people, white American-born people who are attacking people from other countries in this country. Did the president feel the need to take a unilateral action against them? I understand what you're saying, and I'm glad to hear that you say you believe that most Muslims are peace-loving and wonderful people, but I just wish the president and this administration would act that way.
Right, and I guess I wish Democrats would acknowledge that the terrorists that do attack us, and it's not just us, it's also our allies around the world and peaceful Muslims around the world. I mean, peaceful Muslims are the victims more often than Christians, more often than Americans of these radical Islamist terrorists. And I think these terrorists cite al-Baghdadi, they cite ISIS, they cite jihad, their religious beliefs as motivation for their attack. And it seems to me that because liberals are so worried about political correctness, they're so worried about insulting peaceful Muslims by, recognizing that this is a perverted version of it, that it means nothing to them. And that's just going to put more people, more Muslims, more Christians, more people in Germany, more people in France, more people in the Middle East, more Americans at risk.
Well, I can't speak for the monolith of liberals, but I can just say I have no problem taking actions to keep our country safe. And I think any American would support the president in doing that. But when it feels like you're targeting a group, when it feels like there is one group that is being, targeted and being kind of given extra scrutiny, when in reality you could say that for a lot of different groups. This is how minority groups feel in this country. They feel like they're under attack. They don't feel like this president is an ally. So I agree with your rhetoric. I agree with what you're saying. But again, we need an administration that actually believes that.
But don't you think? I mean, don't you think that that's what this executive order does, though? I mean, it does place a target on a certain group. It places a target on terrorists. It recognizes the fact that, the leaders of ISIS or, even Bashar al-Assad in Syria himself, our own FBI director, our former CIA director, they say this is where the threat is emanating from. These nations that are torn apart by jihadi violence, they know that this is a medium that they're using to try to attack us, to try to infiltrate us. Should we ignore that because we're worried that a minority group in the United States who's at this moment not impacted by this ban might have their feelings hurt about it? Or is it the job, the responsibility, the duty of the President of the United States and his administration to keep the American people safe from terror?
Barack Obama didn't take these actions, and as far as I can count, we were pretty safe. We had pretty good security, and he had the best people. He had many of the people that Donald Trump counts as advisors, or at least in theory as advisors, advising him with the same information, civilians who are in government who are giving the same information. So why did this administration, or why did this president have to do this? I think it's because of the influence of people like Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, a very extreme wing of nationalists in the Republican Party who've decided that we need to make an enemy out of somebody. And I think that's what my problem is. I don't have a problem with keeping anybody safe. I have a problem with targeting a group for no reason.
No, and I agree with you. We don't disagree on that. I mean, that's one of the fundamental principles of the United States of America, that no one's discriminated based off of their race, their ethnicity, their gender, what have you, any sort of characteristic. But I guess I feel it's a little bit heartless sometimes when liberals say, oh, our nation has been safe under President Obama. Why do we need to take these methods? When we had San Bernardino, we had Chattanooga, we had Ohio State 2 different times, we had Orlando, we had the Boston Marathon bombing, we had New York and New Jersey attempted bombings. We had the Fort Lauderdale shooter, all of whom, and the Fort Hood shooter, all of whom said that their attacks were motivated by their radical Islamist beliefs. Those were not lone wolf attacks. Those were terror attacks inspired by a certain religion, the ideology of which emanates from these 6 nations that are on this travel ban. We need to prevent that ideology from coming to this nation. We need to prevent people who adhere to that ideology from coming to this nation until we can make sure that innocent people who we welcome to this nation aren't going to be infiltrated by the terrorists.
Liz, just really quickly, look, we've had 9 black parishioners killed by a avowed white supremacist. We've had 2 Middle Eastern American people who were attacked, one who was killed in Kansas by somebody who was a white nationalist. So you have to understand that there are a lot of different perspectives on this. And so me as an African-American male, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the fact that you've got Jewish community centers around the country.
We all are. I mean, it's a separate topic. It's a separate topic. It's an important topic, but I don't think it negates the importance of this topic. Joel, we're out of time. I got to go, but thanks for being here.